Today we've got the Pimax Crystal Super in for review. Thank you to Pimax for letting us borrow one for this, and thanks for letting us continue to borrow the Pimax Crystal Light for comparison purposes. Rest assured though, Pimax get no say over the content of this video. All opinions are my own, and we'll be looking at both the pros and the cons in this review, so let's get stuck in. Now, make no mistake, we are dealing with the high end here. At the time of recording, this is selling for £1,352 here in the UK, which any way you slice it is a lot. Compare and contrast to the Pimax Crystal Light, which we checked out earlier this year, and it seems like a relative bargain at the price of £694 at the time of recording. That's almost half the price. Long story short, I really enjoyed using the Pimax Crystal Light, so I'm kind of keen and curious to see how the Super can build on this, particularly given its price point. Now, regardless of how this video concludes, even if I say this is the best VR headset ever, I appreciate it's likely to be out of budget for some of you, and honestly it would be for me too. Therefore, I can totally understand the appeal of the Crystal Light. Now, up until December 31st, 2025, Pimax are running a promotion whereby if you currently own a VR headset from another brand and you're looking to upgrade to a Crystal Light, if you can provide proof of purchase for a qualifying headset and Pimax approve it, they'll email you a unique discount code to use against a Pimax Crystal Light. And depending on what headset you're upgrading from, the discounts could range from $40 to $100, which is a really great saving. And to be absolutely clear, this is not a trade-in program. You do not have to send your old headset to Pimax. It's yours. You keep it. Keep hold of it. If you're on the fence about a VR upgrade, though, this could be a great opportunity to save yourself some money. I'll leave an affiliate link below. If you also use the code AirNotGift as a level up code, you could receive a random accessory as a gift with your order. Full disclosure, if you make a qualifying purchase using the link in the description, the channel does earn a commission, but if you are genuinely in the market, it is a great way to support the channel at no additional cost to you. Similarly, I'll leave an affiliate link for the Super if you're genuinely in the market for one of those as well. But as always, no pressure whatsoever. So what do you get in the box? Much like the Crystal Light, you get two VR controllers and you get the same cable coming out of the headset. This is a nice long cable and it breaks out into a DisplayPort and USB 3 connector. This breakout box is also where you plug in the power supply as well. As for optional extras, Pimax included a few for us to look at. First up, we've got a thicker face foam unit here, which is really good if you're a glasses wearer like me. It gives that little bit extra clearance between the lenses of your glasses and the lenses of the headset to try and prevent them grinding up against each other in use. We've also got a head strap which can be fitted as an option. This was quite a fiddly job to fit. I mean, just look at the size of these screws. But once it was fitted, it did help to relieve the weight of the headset from the front of my face, specifically my nose. And then finally, they sent some DSAM speakers, which are a nice upgrade over the default speakers. You can install them by removing the foam and then releasing the screw that secures the default speakers in place, then swap in the DSAM speakers. It's keyed, so you can't really get this bit wrong. It will kind of slot in the correct way that it should. Then just secure that screw in again, and it's all done nice and easy. So, what about the specs? How does the Super differ from the Light? What is it exactly that we're paying all this extra money for? And we'll start with pixels per degree, or PPD for short. For those unfamiliar, this is a measure of how many pixels are shown within 1 degree of a user's field of view. Essentially, a higher value here means a sharper image. The Pimax Crystal Light has a 35 ppd, while the Crystal Super that I have here is coming in at 50 ppd. There is also an optional 57 ppd optical engine that you can get for the Super. I don't have that here though, so I can't really speak to that. We'll talk about my impressions of how it looks visually in more detail later in the video, but for now I'll say that you absolutely can notice the difference. It is sharper in use, that is for sure. And this increase in sharpness is all due to the massive resolution we have going on here. I thought the Crystal Light was a heavy hitter on my GPU with its 2880 by 2880 pixels per eye. That's more than a 1440p monitor per eye, which is a lot by anyone's standards. But then the Super takes it one step further, and we've now got a resolution of, wait for it, 3840 by 3840 per eye. For context, that's more than a 4K TV per eye, which is nuts when you consider how gaming on a 4K TV or monitor is widely considered to be the top end of gaming, and therefore a challenge for even high-end PCs to deliver on. And here we are with twice that in total. It's absolutely wild. Stay tuned, as we will be doing some FPS testing and analysis very shortly. There is one small concession though. The Crystal Light had a maximum refresh rate of 120 Hz, whereas the Super, presumably due to the increased resolution gobbling up all that display port bandwidth, is limited to 90 Hz. Next, let's talk about dynamic foveated rendering. This was one of the Super's features that I wanted to try out the most, particularly coming from the Crystal Light. Cut a long story short, foveated rendering was implemented into Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 using quad views as part of Sim Update 2. That means you now get 2 views per eye, hence the name quad views. For each eye, you've got one view that's rendered in a high resolution, and the other view, i.e. the rest of the frame, is rendered at a lower resolution. The idea is this gives your graphics card an easier time of things. The keen viewers among you might remember that we looked at this with the Crystal Light when Sim Update 2 came out for Microsoft Flight Sim 2024, and the FPS boost was well worth it, but there was a drawback in that the high resolution view is constantly fixed in the center of the frame. So if you were to move your eyes but not your head, you could end up looking with your eyes at the lower resolution portion of the view, which isn't ideal. So with the Crystal Light, for best results, you kind of want to keep your eyes looking straight ahead and instead swivel your head as much as possible. The Crystal Super, though, changes that. It has eye tracking built into the headset, so as you move your eyes around, it can dynamically move that high resolution view to be where you are looking, and it is wonderful. I was concerned there might be some kind of weird lag between me looking and then the high resolution image moving to kind of follow my eyes, but I couldn't fault it. There was one point today during my testing where I had to double check. I actually had enabled foveated rendering because it seemed so good. I had to wonder if I accidentally just left it off. But it was actually on. It did not miss a beat. This is really great stuff, and it really helps on the FPS front too. Speaking of, let's briefly look at what kind of FPS we get. My system is currently running a 9800X3D CPU with a 7900 XTX GPU from AMD alongside 64 gigs of DDR5, 6000 CL30 memory. So not the toppest of top end, but no slouch nevertheless. Now, keep in mind the footage you're about to see is in no way representative of what I experienced in the headset. I'm taking one eye of the headset, cropping it, throwing it across from my gaming PC to my recording PC over my network via NDI, encoding it in 1080p. YouTube is then going to compress the snot out of it, and then you get to see it. So you're going to have to kind of take my word for it that on the visuals front, it does look very, very good, but this footage in no way does it justice. Anyway, we're going to start with the default Cessna 172 at Perranporth in Cornwall, and you can see that without any assistance from foveated rendering or FSR upscaling, so just regular old TAA running at the 80% render resolution, which it defaults to on the medium preset, we're getting around about 24, 25 FPS, which is a bit on the low side, let's be honest. And of course, we are GPU limited, with the GPU taking nearly 40 milliseconds to do its portion of the work to get a frame up on those VR screens for us. But what about this time if we added in some foveated rendering? And look at that, we're now getting a not insignificant uplift in FPS. We're now at around a 38, 39 FPS mark, and visually there seems to be no obvious drawback. With the Crystal Light, we got a similar uplift using this technology. However, as we said, the trade-off is that the high resolution portion of the image is fixed in the center, so you kind of have to look straight ahead, otherwise you run the risk of moving your eyes into the lower resolution portion of the frame. Now though, we can move our eyes freely and have that high resolution frame switch to where our eyes are, and it is very, very nice. Like I said earlier, I was trying to almost trick it by moving my eyes a lot really, really quickly, and I couldn't seem to mess it up, and all I did really was make my eyes hurt. So yeah, I guess Pimax 1, me 0. You'll notice though that even with dynamic foveated rendering, we are still limited by the GPU. Being on an AMD GPU here, I can't run DLSS. Maybe that can be another video for another time, but we can use FSR upscaling technologies, as that's now integrated nicely into the sim as well. You can see here just by enabling it at quality mode, we get a bit more FPS. sort of up into the 40s, which doesn't sound like a lot, but keep in mind we are running more than 2 4K TVs here in terms of pixel count. That is no joke. You can get yourself up into the 50s by using performance mode, but I did start to notice the image quality drop away somewhat. I don't really recommend you try the ultra performance mode either, because the internal render resolution is so low. It just looked terrible. And when you're spending this kind of money on this kind of headset, you don't want to be making trade-offs like that, in my opinion. I did think, though, that balanced was a good mix of FPS versus image quality. I mean, I guess that's why they call it balanced. But that kind of got us around the 45 to 46 FPS mark here, just kind of sat on the runway. Usually I'm a bit of a snob when it comes to using upscaling technologies, not just within the sim, but in the other PC gaming that I do as well. However, I am willing to take a broader view when it comes to VR, as there are just so many pixels at play here. It's borderline impractical to run without it. And I found this with the Crystal Lite, and that had a resolution of 2880 by 2880 per eye. And now we've got even more going on with the Crystal Super. Again, just remember that's more than a 4K TV per eye. So I think you have to kind of side on being practical when it comes to this kind of stuff with VR. Given that I've spent quite a lot of time now with the Pimax Crystal Lite, let's rattle off some of the pros and the cons of the Crystal Super. Let's start with the pros. Pro number one, image resolution. It goes without saying that all of those pixels at play absolutely do make for an improvement to image quality. I could absolutely notice it over the Crystal Lite. It's just such a shame that the footage I'm able to capture from the headset and show you on this video looks so pants, because it is absolutely a world away from what I experienced when using the headset. And yeah, I guess there's no other way. You just sort of have to take my word for that. So sorry. Pro number two, modularity. I'm running the 50 PPT optical engine, but you can actually remove the entire optical engine and replace it with another versus having to replace the entire headset. They do a 57 ppd optical engine if that's your thing, and there's also an OLED model coming. Again, I can't speak to that as I've not tried it, but there's modularity built in here and I definitely appreciate that. Pro number three, dynamic foveated rendering. Thanks to the eye tracking built into the Crystal Super, when using foveated rendering, that high resolution part of the image can move to where your eyes are looking versus being fixed in the center of the frame. This is really nice, and try as I might, I couldn't trip it up. It worked really, really well, and the FPS boost was very welcome without really having to give anything up in terms of image quality. You'd be mad not to enable this. Pro number four is automatic IPD. That is the distance between your eye pupils. On the Crystal Lite, they would ask you to measure this yourself, like with a ruler or something, and then manually input that value into the headset, which is fine until somebody else wants to go. With the Crystal Super, thanks to eye tracking, it can work this out itself, and when you put it on, you can kind of hear the little motors moving around and the lens is moving to the optimum position. That is a very, very nice quality of life feature for sure. What about the cons then? Well, con number one, image resolution. But hang on, I hear some of you say you just listed image resolution as a pro. And yeah, I did, and that's kind of the point. It's a double-edged sword in that, yes, it looks flipping amazing, but damn, does it ever put a strain on your system. I think to really fully enjoy this headset, you need to be on a very high-end system. I heard some people suggesting, I think it's on Reddit, that maybe run the headset at a lower resolution, but at that point, why not just save the money and get the Lite? That would be like buying a 4K monitor and then just being like, oh no, I'm going to run it at 1440p. Why not just get a 1440p monitor, save some money, run it at its native res? But yeah, bottom line, I think you're going to need a high-end and therefore expensive PC to enjoy this headset to its fullest. Which leads me on to con number two, the price. This headset is a lot of money, and to enjoy it fully, you're obviously going to need a high-end PC and therefore an expensive PC. And I get that for a lot of you, that is out of the question. Honestly, it would be for me too, had Pimax not sent one out to borrow. This is targeting the high end in terms of the headset itself, and therefore the PC kind of required to make the best use of it. So just be ready for that. Con number three, the refresh rate. Compared to the Crystal Lite, the Crystal Super does have a lower maximum refresh rate. This is presumably due to the extra resolution at play here, gobbling up all of that DisplayPort bandwidth. Personally, I don't find this to be an issue in the sim. I mean, good luck getting the sim to run at 120 or even 90 FPS in VR anyway, but maybe if you're planning to use the headset for a different application and you've somehow stumbled across this video that's focused on the sim, that is something that's probably worth you thinking about. And finally, con number 4, Mura. There is some Mura present on my Pimax Crystal Super. It's certainly not terrible. It doesn't affect my enjoyment, but it is there and it would be wrong of me to not point it out. For those of you that don't know what Mura is, it's kind of when you get uneven brightness and contrast across the displays, and it kind of appears like an irregular pattern over the screen. Some people say it's like looking through a very thin layer of fabric. I noticed it initially when looking at a completely blue sky, and I did some Googling to then discover what Mura actually was, and then to also discover that Mura was in fact what I was seeing. When we looked at the Crystal Light earlier this year, it was my first time using VR at all, so I wasn't really up to date with all the VR-related technical terms, so I had no idea that Mura was even a thing during the review process of the Crystal Light, but I didn't notice anything weird, so therefore why would I start looking for something on the internet that I wasn't experiencing? I then started to think, did my Crystal Light have Mura all along and did I miss it? So I fired up the Crystal Light again, and then I fired up the Crystal Super, sort of switching between them. And now that I know to look for it, I can kind of see it a little bit on the Light, but I don't think it's as noticeable as it was on the Super. Therefore, when I initially reviewed it, it went unnoticed. But it's one of those things that once you know to look for it, you're always going to see it until you sort of calm down a little bit. It reminds me a little bit of when I got my 16-inch MacBook Pro back in 2019. This was like the MacBook Pro to get at the time, and the Apple community had been advising for months, don't buy the current 15-inch one, wait for the 16-inch, it's going to change it all. So I did, I got it, and I loved it. And then I read some article online complaining about the ghosting on the display. Basically, the screens had quite a poor response time. And for about a week or two afterwards, it was all I could see. And the week prior, I hadn't noticed it at all. So every time I moved my cursor, I would be watching for and obsessing over the trails it might be leaving. But then at a certain point, I calmed down and I focused on, the thing I was supposed to be focusing on, actually doing my work on the laptop, and I stopped noticing it. This is all to say that I can totally understand if Mura would really, really bother you, no matter how slight, and it kind of caught me off guard a bit when I saw it, particularly on that bright blue clear sky. But actually, once I got down to the business of flying the plane and I turned on live weather so the sky wasn't completely blue, I barely noticed it. I bring this up not to defend the fact that the Mura is there, because let's be clear, it absolutely is. That is a fact, but it is present, and I noticed it on things like clear blue skies. But just given how subjective VR is, it's going to be something you really have to make your own mind up on. I guess that's why Pimax offer their Pimax Prime service, where you pay an upfront cost for the headset and you try it for 14 days. If you like it, you pay the Prime fee to keep it, or if you don't, you return it, and if you don't get on with it. So then, time for closing arguments. Is the Pimax Crystal Super worth it? I've been mulling this over for a few days now, and the thing I keep coming back to the most is the increase in resolution and the dynamic foveated rendering. Those are the two big hitters for me. However, one has a trade-off and one does not. The increase in resolution is wonderful. It looks really crisp when compared to the Pimax Crystal Light. However, it then puts a higher burden on your PC to deliver enough frames at that massive resolution, which might then require a PC upgrade to fully enjoy the headset. So we are absolutely dealing with the high end here, and that's going to probably extend to your PC as well. You're going to need a big rig to keep up with the Pimax Crystal Super. Dynamic foveated rendering, however, does not seem to have any real drawbacks as far as I can tell. It's implemented directly into Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, and it allows a smaller, higher resolution portion of the frame to follow your eyes. So basically, wherever you're looking will be rendered in high resolution, and where you're not looking will be rendered in a lower resolution, but you're not going to see it, so it doesn't matter. Because as soon as you move your eyes, the high resolution portion of the image will have followed your eyes. Try as I might, I could not get it to mess up. Pimax have done a really nice job here. So really, I guess if you're not price sensitive and you want the higher resolution and you want the dynamic foveated rendering, and you have or are willing to also buy a top-end gaming PC, sure, get the Super. But if you're more price conscious, I would advise maybe sticking with the Crystal Light, as A, the headset will be cheaper, and B, you won't need such an outrageously powerful PC. Although don't be thinking it'll be a walk in the park either. The Crystal Light still has more than a 1440p monitor per eye in terms of pixel count, so be ready for that. To compare the image quality of the Crystal Light to the Crystal Super is kind of like comparing a 1440p monitor to a 4K monitor. Obviously, the 4K monitor looks super sharp, and once you get used to it, it's kind of hard to go back to a lower resolution. but it requires a very beefy PC. And it's also not like a 1440p monitor is terrible either. They're very, very nice actually, and you don't need the quite, the same level of high-end PC to enjoy a 1440p monitor. So like many things in life, and particularly with technology, it's all a trade-off. You just have to decide which set of trade-offs you're willing to make. If you're wanting to save some money and you don't mind trading some resolution and dynamic foveated rendering, probably get the Crystal Lite. Though if you want the top end and you don't mind throwing your wallet at the problem, the Crystal Super paired with a beefy PC makes for a very compelling VR experience indeed. Thanks once again to Pimax for letting us borrow this for making this video. It's been really cool checking it out. If you're genuinely in the market, you can use my affiliate link in the video description. It's a great way to support the channel at no additional cost to you. And if you use the coupon code AIRNOT at checkout, you can save 3% off of the upfront cost of the headset. Thanks again for watching, folks. Any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments. But until next time, you will take the very best care of yourselves. Be good to each other. And as always, happy flying.